Hey guys, Jacqueline here with Zenith Home Loans. Thank you for joining me for another one of our episodes of Everything in Between. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Jen Welte of Heritage Title Company, as well as Terry Williams. He is the state underwriter for Heritage and Chicago Title. Thank you both so much for being here today. This is a treat having two of you on the call.
Well, thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So why don't you guys just tell us a little bit about yourselves and some of your background, and then we'll hop into some of these questions.
Sure. My name is Jen Welte, as Jacqueline said. I'm our VP or Vice President of the sales team here at Heritage Title. So our job duty in sales is to really partner with lenders and real estate agents and investors and really focus on growing their business and bringing tools and technology and masterminds to them to help really catapult them to where their goals are.
Awesome.
Terry Williams. I've been with Heritage, going on over 30 years now. I started the title business in 1976 in Greeley. So that's pretty much all I've ever done. So I'm the state underwriter. So I make, I'm kind of a title geek, and I love the history and especially about the Colorado history with title insurance. And so I help make underwriting decisions and get deals closed. And I can make them here on a local level. So no need to go out of state or ask someone else.
Okay. And so how often, Terry, do you have to get involved in a transaction where you're having to do you underwrite every single title policy that comes through, or just the weird ones?
No, just so the title commitment is produced by our title plant. Once it goes out, if there's issues on that, that's when I get involved. Now, we also have seven regional title officers around the state.
Okay.
And so they'll work with them as well, but then I get involved daily. It's daily. There's issues and deals with deals anymore.
Gotcha. Okay.
We're here to make them close.
So the best thing about having Terry just like a couple offices down from me a couple days a week is if there are issues with a commitment that maybe an agent says, why are we calling for an ILC? I can either go to one of our title officers, or I can walk down to Terry's office and say, hey, can you take a look at this and see if we can remove it? Mm-hmm. And they make a decision right then and there. Terry is awesome. So like some of our properties here in Denver aren't lot and block legal description, they're meets and bounds. And I've seen him with a big map, like drawing out a map, trying to figure out where property bounds are. I mean, it's just like, it's such a long history of Colorado, and you really need to know what's going on. So having somebody who has well over 35 years in the industry just is a benefit to not only us as employees, but you as a lender, your agents at home, but consumers as well.
Yeah. Nope, that's awesome. It's always helpful to have that level of expertise in this business, because there's always something in real estate, right?
Right. Always. And more things are coming up now. So.
Yeah, I bet. So why don't we start off on super low, simple level? What is title insurance? Why do I need it?
Okay, so title insurance, everybody on this or watching this, they either have homeowners insurance, renters insurance, or auto insurance. Those insurances cover things that have not yet occurred, so something in the future. Whereas title insurance covers things that have happened in the past, theoretically back to the time that Colorado became a state. So when you think of insurance, most people are mistaken in the fact that they think that we are protecting their actual home, like where they walk through their front door or their garage door, but we're not. We are protecting or insuring the actual property, so the dirt that their home lays on or lies on. There's two different types of title insurance. There's an owner's policy, which you get when you purchase the home. And then there's a lender's policy, which you as a lender request when you're financing or refinancing a property.
Okay. And so if I own a home, no matter what, there's probably title insurance on the property for one reason or another.
There should be, yes. That's a kind of a catch-22, because in the months prior to our slowdown, if you will, like March, April, people were doing all cash offers. And one of the ways that they were making their offer attractive is they were saying, well, we don't need title insurance because that's an expense that usually the seller pays for. So, sellers were like, okay, that saves me $1,500 to $2,500. So we'll go with this offer. So theoretically, yes, most of the properties are going to have title insurance, but it doesn't transfer from owner to owner. So you're always going to need to buy your own owner's policy.
Okay. So does title insurance, does it expire? Like I bought a house today, I closed on it, and I've got title insurance on there. does it expire at some point that I need to be paying attention to and re-up it, or how does that work?
No, it doesn't expire. You just can't transfer it. So
Okay.
if you sell your house, that title policy ceases to exist and that new owner will be issued a new owner's policy.
Okay. And then when I refinance, whatever title insurance policy that's currently on the property, that would get kind of redone essentially, and we would do a new one, or can that one transfer over to my property just because I'm not transferring properties, I'm just I'm changing the loan terms?
Yeah, so your owner's policy will stay the same owner's policy. In a refinance situation, the only thing that will be reissued is the lender's policy, and it's a very much smaller amount than an actual owner's policy. So you get a pretty big discount.
Okay, got it. What are the different ways that I can take title?
You want to answer this one?
Well, typically in Colorado, it's mainly if it's a couple, they take title as joint tenants with the survivorship. So if one passes away, the other one will own the property. Say you're going into business with another person, and you each going to have your own interest, and that's typically tenants in common.
Okay.
So that means you could, if you wanted to get out of that property, you could sell your half to somebody else, or you can go in with several people. Tenants in common. If it's a person singly, sometimes it's just tenants in severalty. Also, you can take title as an LLC. If you want to do an LLC, oftentimes people will put property into trusts. So joint tenants, tenants in common, single tenants, LLCs, trusts, partnership. You don't see many partnerships anymore. Primarily LLCs are the most used.
Okay.
Some corporations, but mainly that's going to be on commercial property.
Got it. And so is there a benefit to doing, like, if there's me and my partner or me and my spouse, is there a benefit to titling it one way versus another, or putting it into the name of the trust, or it's just simply a matter of whatever the entity, me being, however I exist, that's how I'm going to be on paper?
Yeah, if it's just the two of you, I would recommend joint tenants always.
Okay.
Because you don't have to worry about probate and those types of issues. So
the only situation that I would kind of add on to that is a later in life second marriage, when you might have kids from a previous relationship. For example, my dad was in a pretty serious relationship. They were talking about marriage. I did not want his home to go to his future wife if something were to happen. So they would have taken title as tenants in common, and his portion would have been given to me and my sister, for example. So there's different ways to structure it. It's just whatever is best for your specific situation.
Okay. And then what about because I get clients ask me this a lot, where we've got a couple that's maybe not married yet, or they're married, but only one of them is going to be on the loan. Is there any piece that we should pay attention to for, if they're not on the loan, adding them onto title? Or maybe I bought my house before I met my spouse, and then I want to add them onto title later. Like, what kind of things should we pay attention to? What kind of questions should we ask there?
Well, you can do that. So if you want to, if you're entitled by yourself and you're going to take out a loan, you want to add another person, you can do a deed to that other person.
Okay.
You can do a deed, and if it's a 2006 newer title policy, that person will become automatically insured under your title policy as well, say a spouse.
Okay.
And then you can both take out the loan at that time.
Okay.
So if you're not adding that significant other to the loan and you're just adding them to title, we always suggest that you work with a real estate attorney to perform that deed, because you just want to make sure that it's done correctly, that the legal description's done correctly, that they name how the title should be vested, whether it's joint tenants or tenants in common. Because in Colorado, it's kind of interesting that if you leave out that tenancy, it automatically defaults to tenants in common. And, in case of a death, you might have to probate a portion of that property, and that's time consuming and expensive. So that's why you work with a lender, a real estate attorney, and an agent who are helping you throughout that transaction.
I see a lot of deeds where people go on the internet and do it, and it's not properly done. And then one of the spouses or one of the other parties passed, and they think they're getting title, and they list the house, and then we send out a title claim requiring probate. And it's a really difficult thing, because now they've got to wait several months to go get probate, maybe open up and brings back bad memories. So we really recommend working with attorneys. We can't practice law and prepare deeds outside real estate contract.
Okay. And then what if I wanted to take somebody off of title? Is that something I'm allowed to do? Is there any special circumstances where maybe something like that wouldn't make sense?
So yeah, again, it's the same situation where we would refer you to probably to a real estate attorney to execute that deed. The biggest thing is if you have a loan, just talking to your loan officer and making sure that the lender's okay with that, because there's some rules that lenders have to follow, and they just want to make sure that they know what's going on when you're transferring ownership on that deed. But same situation as adding somebody, you just want to make sure that you're doing it correctly, because it can cause problems and void your warranties if you change ownership incorrectly.
Got it. And then what happens if somebody puts a lien on my house that has nothing to do with my mortgage? Somebody I didn't pay a bill, or I had a judgment filed against me or something like that. What happens then?
So say you bought your house, and then you had a collection agency come to file a judgment against you, say for $5,000. Because title insurance only goes from the date you brought the property back, you wouldn't be covered for anything that happens in the future.
Okay.
You did it on your own accord. Basically, we call it suffered, created, or assumed. You're the one that created the judgment, and so there's no coverage for that. Only if, now say there was a judgment prior, and for some reason we didn't see it or didn't pick it up, you'd be covered against the judgment from somebody else prior to you taking ownership. But once you take ownership, you're responsible for the title at that point.
Unless it's if it's like not a legitimate lien, then you would go through an attorney and they would help you get that removed.
Yeah. So now, say somebody just filed a deed of trust on your property. We call it a stranger to title, because it's like I can't sign a deed of trust on Jen's property because I have no interest in it. So basically, it's no good.
And we see that sometimes in divorce situations. When it's kind of a bad, messy divorce and one person might not be on title, that person will sometimes go and file a lien against it to stop the sale or to delay the deal. And so if that's the case, then yeah, we would recommend you go back to a real estate attorney and get that removed, because it was not placed correctly.
Okay. And so how often do you guys see where I'm buying a house and you guys did your title search to make sure all liens and stuff got paid off and released with the seller, but then something pops up that got missed, that was the seller's, but now it's against the property? Does that happen very often? I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've only seen it happen once on a transaction, and the title company took care of it. But how rare, or I guess how frequent, does something like that occur?
It happens occasionally. You've got to remember that we go off all the public records that are posted in the county. And that, you've got humans entering it on a computer system, and then we've got a title department, and they're doing that too. So if the numbers are transpired sometimes, yeah. So that's a great reason to have title insurance, because if something is missed, it says, and again, somebody comes back and says, well, I had a judgment on this property, or I have a deed of trust, I wasn't paid off, then we would cover you for that. You can file a claim under your title policy. We're governed by the Colorado Division of Insurance, just like any other title, any other insurance company. So you could file a claim. And we deal with claims quite a bit. Yeah.
And so let's say somebody had a judgment and they're going to sell their property. Have you seen, can that potentially stop the transaction from moving forward if there's let's just $300,000 judgment against one of the owners of the property, and now they're trying to sell, and maybe there's not, that judgment's still open, so obviously it needs to be taken care of. Will that potentially stop the sale of the property unless there's proceeds to take care of it, or how would something like that work?
Yeah. If let's say they owe more than what they're getting on the sale, that could definitely stop the sale. What we see most is just it's a delay, because if it's in collections or they're in bankruptcy or they have a tax lien, it just takes a little longer to get those payoff statements. So, we really try to get on top of things the minute we get your contract. So then that way we can start working on getting all of the lien releases and collections taken care of. But, the IRS, for example, just takes a little longer. To get us the information.
A little longer is generous.
I know. I'm like, if we can get a hold of them. I mean, it's the unfortunate truth. But, that definitely can delay the closing. And if the judgment is more than what they're going to get proceed wise, then yes, it can absolutely stop the sale.
Okay. What are some common title problems or claims that come up most frequently?
Well, one thing we were going to talk about is owner's extended coverage and mechanics liens,
Okay,
especially on new construction. Once you buy the house and the certificate of occupancy has been issued, anybody that hasn't been paid has 4 months to file a mechanics lien after the work is completed. So if you get owner's extended coverage on a new home, you have mechanics lien coverage automatically built in. So if somebody does come and file a lien, we would protect you against that.
Also, on that note too, when you're buying it from somebody, let's say your house has been there since the 60s, that seller might have had to get carpet replaced, hardwood floors replaced, a roof replaced, and you don't know if those contractors were paid. So that's when mechanics lien coverage kicks in for established or existing homes as well.
okay. And then you guys mentioned an ILC earlier. What is that? And when would I need something like that?
It's an improvement location certificate.
Okay,
A survey, it's basically a survey. And when we provide owner's extended coverage, so there's 4 standard exceptions that come with every commitment and every title policy. Those are mainly against unrecorded matters.
Okay.
Because we can only search documents that have been recorded in the clerk and recorder's office. So those are unrecorded documents or easements and things that show up that you may not know about. So typically, if it's a lot and block subdivision that's been established and been around for a while, we don't require an ILC. But if you get in parts of, the mountains, the foothills, certain areas of town where it's, especially older parts of town where they have cut up the legal descriptions and you've got multiple legal descriptions or meets and bounds legal description, we'll require an ILC at that time just to make sure that the house is sitting where it should be sitting. Or if we have reason to believe, we look at aerial maps and sometimes say the neighbor built a garage and it looks to be encroaching on our property. So we will require it at that time. But the whole reason for an ILC is so we can provide owner's extended coverage.
Okay. I feel like from my side of the table anyways, most frequently I see an ILC requirement is when it's a new build, most specifically.
Yes.
Okay.
And the house been built on the lot. And I've seen them where they haven't been.
Okay.
Or the fence line.
Yeah. I'm sure in some of these older neighborhoods, you see that probably more often than not.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you a real life example. Jacqueline knows where I live. So when we bought our house, we knew that our fence line was not on our property because it just looked a little off. And so we went to our neighbor who is an original homeowner since the late 50s, early 60s. And I said, hey, we're going to get an ILC because we want to replace the fence. I don't think it's on the correct property line. He goes, oh no, back in the day, we just kind of threw up the fence and eyeballed it. And it was off. I mean, it's a funny story because it was off quite a bit. It was kind of like a pizza slice. So it started off narrow and then got wider as you went to our backyard. And I think it was off like a total of 6 feet in our backyard. So, I mean, that would be me giving up a large part of my property to, if he, God forbid, passes away or he wanted to be like, nope, this is mine now. It's been this way since the 60s. He technically could have probably filed eminent domain on me and kept that portion of my property. And I would have lost 6 feet of my property.
Right. What is meets and bounds?
So if you have a subdivision, it's lot 1, block 1, this subdivision. So meets and bounds is where it's a lengthy legal description. So say you're out, so you start at a certain point and you go north 0 degrees, 35 feet, and then you go east, 90 degrees south. And so when you see some of the jigsaw puzzles, those pieces, they're all individual calls. And so it's not a plat, it's not a lot 1, block 1. It's a lengthy legal description, and you'll see them, especially in the mountains. I guess I'm not explaining it very well, but it was how when they originally surveyed the United States and the country back in the 1800s. That's how they decided. That's how they create a lot of property. So
a lot of times you'll see pins.
Yeah.
Where they put like a pin down to say like the northwest corner of this property. So
and then you go west so many feet, and then you go south so many feet.
I see.
So
it's just not a easy, hey, this section is this section and it's a lot and block and you own this.
Okay.
So it's important to notate too, we only insure legal descriptions. We don't care what the property address is. We only are looking at that legal description.
Okay. And so this isn't a question I prepared you for, but out of curiosity, do you have any idea why in Jefferson County specifically, because this is where I see this happen the most frequently, is if it's a townhouse. It looks like a townhouse. It's in a townhouse community, but for whatever reason, the powers that be, when they registered everything, they listed it as a condo.
No.
Do we have any idea how do we fix it? Because it's just
sometimes, so you'll have a townhouse project, but they'll call it a condominium, like Mountain West condominiums or something, but it's really a townhouse, or vice versa. You have a condominium project and they'll call it some type of townhouses. Because with a townhouse, we're insuring the land.
Right.
It's in a condominium, we're only insuring the airspace.
Okay.
So you've got a condominium, and that's why they do a condominium map and describe it and depict it, because it's the airspace. So if that burns down, all you own is still that airspace. That's the only thing we're insuring. So we insure the airspace along with interest in the common elements and the parking lot, that type of stuff. So everybody owns. There's 50 owners. Everybody owns 1/50th of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then for you as a lender, we offer an endorsement for condominiums. So that's something we can talk about offline too.
Yeah. Condos are just the bane of my existence, because sometimes it's like I'm looking at it, I'm like, no, that's a townhouse. And then you pull legal description and it's like, nope, it's a condo, and it changes everything that, from my perspective, what I do. And usually it's a higher rate and everything else changes from an HOA perspective and things like that. So I was just curious.
Yeah.
Let's
see.
see.
Thank the Bobalon for that, just so you know.
Pardon me?
I said you can thank the Bobalon for some of the issues, just so you know, because that was kind of where condo defect law started.
Oh, okay. Perfect. I knew it wasn't something I did. It's just like somebody did this and it was before my time.
Yeah.
Are there any common mistakes that you see homeowners make when it comes to their title insurance?
Well, I think so. First of all, they need to hang on to their original title policy.
Okay.
Because if they ever have to file a claim, they have to supply that title policy. So that's important. They hang on to the policy. Not reviewing probably the biggest thing I see is at the start of the transaction of a sale, they get a copy, especially a buyer gets a copy of the title commitment that's going to list all the exceptions. And the exceptions are items that other people have an interest in your property, like a utility company or an easement, and they don't review those. They should go over those with their realtors and the agent and we're more than happy to go over with them. Oftentimes I'll sit down with a buyer and go over the exceptions. And then a problem comes up, say they have an easement in the backyard and they decide to build a shed on it, and public service comes in and they have to move the shed, and they're upset about that. But we told them up front of the title commitment that there is an easement that exists there. Sometimes covenants, they need to review the covenants, especially on horse property or if they want to raise chickens, that type of stuff. So it's really important as a buyer that they go through the title commitment and understand what really affects their property.
Okay.
To piggyback on that, as far as keeping your own title policy, oftentimes one of the claims that we come up with is they're needing to file a claim, but that title insurance company is out of business. And they have no clue who the underwriter is. They don't really even know who the title company was, because, once again, people don't really understand title insurance and the need for it. So if that company's out of business and they can't get a copy of their policy and they don't know who to contact for the underwriting claim, it becomes a big issue.
Okay. I guess it's never occurred to me, and I haven't had any issues with my property lines at least and things like that. So it's not come up for me. But when, other than like, there's like a problem with easement or my property lines are off, things like that, how do people often file claims with title? Like, does that come up a lot? And is it mostly those kinds of issues? Like there's a property, like there's a property line issue, or I'm trying to build something and your stuff's on my property and things like that?
Yeah, we actually were just talking about an incident where it was in Brighton. It was lot and block, so we didn't call for an ILC or survey. The seller needs to disclose to title and to the agent that they created an addition or added on an addition. So the seller didn't tell us, or we would have absolutely said we needed a new ILC, but their addition encroached on the neighboring property, and it was at a vacant lot so much so that lot became useless. So they could never go, and that property owner of the vacant lot could never go and build their own home. So that becomes a title claim, or a possible title claim. And luckily for us, they worked it out and the buyer ended up buying that other property as well. But yeah, it's just knowing where your easements are, where your property lines are, we protect from forgery and fraud, and that's a big one. Any other ones?
Missing heirs, somebody, grandpa sold the property, but, according to the will, his grandson was supposed to get part of the property and he didn't. He could come back and have a potential claim.
Okay.
I'm dealing with an issue right now in El Paso County where somebody bought 6 acres, and there's 40 acres. So there's 40 acres that are south of them that are going to be developed. And I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And there was an easement. So they bought this 6 acres. They built their $1 million house. And there was an easement that affected the west 60 feet of their property from 1972.
Okay.
And Jen, this is always what fascinates me, is documents that recorded 50, 100 years ago still affect property today. So it was in his title commitment, and the lot was treed. And all of a sudden the developer wants to come in and take out 60 feet of his property and develop 40 acres south of him. And he has the legal right to do that. And I feel really bad for these people, but they had no idea that was there or what it meant. And that's why it's important to
know how to read it.
To know how to read
Yeah.
the title.
So again, real life situation where I live, I have an easement in my backyard for utilities, underground utilities. I knew that buying my property because I did know how to read a policy, but if I hadn't known how to read a policy, I don't know if it would have been pointed out to me. And, legally, I can't put a permanent foundation back there because Excel might need to come and dig that up to get to their utilities. So it's just knowing how to read it, or relying on your agent to explain everything, or calling us so we can go over that with your buyers.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Can I use any title company that I want for my home if I'm doing a purchase or a refinance?
So yes, usually in Colorado, the seller pays and picks title insurance, but again, consumers, they don't really understand title insurance. They don't typically have a relationship with a title sales executive or a closer. So they really rely on their agent's relationship with their title partner to choose that. The same goes with a refinance. So if you're looking to refinance, you'd call Jacqueline and you'd say, hey, I have a friend that works at Heritage Title. I'd like to use them for title. And Jacqueline would see if that was allowed through her underwriting process. The biggest thing is I don't think consumers really understand the choice lies with them, but they really just depend on their agent and their lender to refer who they work with.
One thing I see a lot, because I'm backup state counsel for all of Colorado, and state counsel was on vacation last week. And it's really interesting to me that all the out-of-state title companies that do business in Colorado, because of the internet and all the information, and they really don't know what they're doing. They don't know the law, they don't know the customs, they don't know the traditions. And so I always recommend, obviously, you work with a local company, because you can pick up the phone and call her, you can pick up the phone and call me, and we'll go through it. But otherwise, you're talking to somebody in Texas. There's a lot of title plants in Texas that do business all over the country. Now, there's some on the East Coast, and they don't understand some of the basic things about underwriting title insurance in Colorado.
Yeah. I've experienced that as well.
I'm sure you have as a lender.
Yeah.
Not only that, not all title companies are created equally, right? So a lot of times when you're writing a contract, or an agent's writing a contract, they're asking for OEC insurance to be provided for their buyer. Well, not all title companies have OEC. So if the seller accepts that offer and they go with like a smaller title company that can't provide OEC coverage, you would, as the agent, need to know how to look to see if that OEC is included on that prelim. And then if it's not, you need to go back to that listing agent and say, hey, we specifically asked for OEC. I'd like to move it to Heritage Title or another title company that offers that. So, for agents, just knowing what to look for, we really, really try to educate our lenders and our agents on how to read a title commitment, because at the end of the day, if there's a claim, your buyer's going to come and look at you and say, why didn't you tell me this? Because they don't know how to read a commitment. Right.
So whether I'm purchasing or if I'm refinancing, I think this is probably a better question if I'm refinancing, but is there any benefit if I bought my house and Heritage Title was my title company, and then I go to do a refinance 2 years from now, is there any benefit to me going back to the original title company to use them again, or does it matter at that point?
So for a refinance, just knowing that we have the file, we can look at the previous file to see what was already on the prelim commitment. There isn't a price break. However, if you go to sell, so let's say you've lived in your house for less than 3 years and you decide you need to move for whatever reason, we would give you a reissue rate and it would save you some money, but that's really the price rate because all of our fees are filed with the state.
Okay, got it. And so coverage wise, nothing's going to change because I'm refinancing because the owner's policy is still intact. It's just the lender's policy that I'm changing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. I think we already, oh no, I guess we didn't ask this one. If I take my name off of title, but I'm still on the mortgage, do I still own the house?
Yes.
So,
Okay.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you take your name off title.
I was like, wait, I do?
No.
We talked about that.
If you take your name off of title, then no, you don't have any rights to that property. However, you are still responsible for the loan if you're still on the mortgage.
Okay.
So the only way to completely sever that responsibility is to have the other homeowner or the other person staying in that home refinance in just their name.
Okay, got it. So, and I see this a lot with clients who are separating where they're like, well, can't I just take them off title? And it's like, well, you can, and they won't have any rights to the home, but the mortgage is still going to show up and that doesn't actually help the other person, which depending on what you're trying to accomplish may or may not matter. So, last question that I have for you is, do you recommend that non-married people, so if I'm not married, but we're together, should we both be on title if only one of us is on the loan, or kind of what are your recommendations around that?
So that's definitely a personal choice. There's risks involved whether you're married or unmarried. You know, I don't think anybody enters into a relationship and goes and buys a house thinking, oh, we might not make it. If you have that feeling, probably not.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think everybody enters into a relationship, especially if it's serious enough to buy a home where you think everything's going to work out. So it's definitely a personal choice. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer for that.
Depends on.
Yeah, so it just depends on the relationship.
If this is the third time and you have a prenup, you know, maybe it's
maybe.
Yeah. Or with tenants in common. So if something happens, you know, you walk away with your each portion of the equal property, you know.
Because Colorado's not a community property state.
Nope.
You know, we get asked that a lot.
And so what is, can you elaborate on that for people who aren't familiar with that term?
And I believe some states that are community property, if I own a house by myself and you and I are married now, you own half of the house.
Whether I'm on title or not.
Whether you're on title or not, yeah.
Okay.
And it's not true in Colorado.
So I lived in Arizona for 3 years, and that is a common property or common property state. So at the time I wasn't married, but if I were married, my husband would have had to sign off on my beneficiaries. If I had a bank account, because he would have to have knowledge of that account if he wasn't part of it.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. Those are all the questions that I had. Is there anything else that you guys want to make sure that maybe there's some misconceptions around title that you get asked a lot, or anything else that you want people to know about title and just kind of how it works?
Well, I think you've covered it. You know, we're obviously big believers in title insurance. And again, my big thing when I talk to people or I teach a class is make sure you got a relationship with a local title company and a strong underwriter. Now, you know, we have there was, you know, back early when everybody was opening title companies, because it's a strength of the underwriter. We're a direct operation for Commonwealth Title, which is one of the biggest title insurance companies in the country, and billions of dollars in reserves to handle claims. So we're very sound financially, which is really important these days. They've all heard stories of title companies going out of business.
Oh yeah, I was in it in 07 and 08 when you showed up to closing and the title company was closed.
Yeah, and they had taken money, and it was some horrible things.
I kind of use the joke, are you going to be at their closing, or are they going to be at your closing? So just working with a reputable company. I mean, Heritage Title, we were founded in 1977. We are a very, very proud Colorado company, but with that backing of a Fortune 238 corporate company who oversees us, our parent company is a Fortune 238. So reserve wise and financial strength, that's huge. And the history of Colorado. And we actually just did a piece on our social media page with all of our title officers and how long they have like joint experience, combined experience. I think it was well over 200,
280 years.
280 years between our title officers. So, there's only so much a computer can do. And it really, our people touch and look at and help. And as he said, just having a relationship with somebody in title is very helpful, whether you're using that company or not. So Jack, if you weren't using Heritage Title, just calling me and saying, hey, Jen, there's this file that I'm the lender on. I need some assistance. And just having those relationships is huge. So when your title sales exec reaches out to you, take them up on a coffee so you get to know them, because inevitably you're going to have a transaction with their title company and you want to make sure you have a contact. But, we just appreciate all of our agents and all of our lenders and investors and builders. And just know that we are always here to answer questions. We love doing classes and educating people on title insurance. Anything we can do to make your life easier, to explain this to your borrowers, or if you're an agent, to your buyers or sellers, we're game for.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate both of your time. And Terry, thank you for jumping in.
Thank you.
And adding your expertise. That was super helpful. We'll make sure to link all your contact information in the video so that if anybody has additional questions, or maybe you're looking for a new title rep, we can definitely get them in contact. But I really appreciate the both of you taking your time today. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jacqueline.